Evening, everybody. Welcome. I'm Rachel Bordoli, President of San Francisco Vegan Society, and I'm really glad you're here with us tonight. SFVS is a volunteer-run nonprofit founded in 1968, and our mission is to promote a fully plant-based diet and a healthy, ethical, sustainable vegan way of life. At our core, we exist to build a strong vegan community here in the Bay Area. We want to create spaces where people can meet, learn, exchange ideas, and engage thoughtfully around compassionate living. This webinar is a direct expression of that mission. Rather than telling people what to think, the Society aims to convene meaningful conversations, especially when the answers are challenging and don't lend themselves to simple answers. Tonight's conversation is in some ways a follow-up to the webinar which we held at the end of January on the power of truth in advocacy. Tonight, our topic is welfare washing, which I will summarize just briefly as the use of marketing labels like humanely raised, to repackage just marginally less brutal industry practices as if they were premium life and premium ethical choices. And our panelists, feel free later to, give us your definition, but just that's how I would briefly describe it. Our plan was to have, initially to have Jason from Animal Place, Jason Bolalek, join us tonight. As well as Jack and Mike and Leah. And we are super grateful to Kathy Cullen from Jolene's retreat, who has been able to step in at the last minute to replace Jason, who was called away for an emergency involving a sick bird. So thank you so much, Kathy, for joining us.
Thank you.
Before we dive in, I have a few housekeeping notes. I asked the panelists to keep their initial responses to each question fairly concise, generally 1 to 2 minutes per question. My fellow board member and co-host, Karen Schuster, who's off camera, she will announce time after 2 minutes has passed for each speaker. And at that point, the current speaker will wrap up as quickly as possible and we'll move to the next speaker. Then we may loop back because this is a dialogue, it's a conversation, and we want our panelists to be able to respond to what other panelists said. And I particularly encourage this if panelists disagree or just want to offer a different perspective. Karen will also be managing the chat and the Q&A. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A, not the chat. And after we've gone through the questions that I want to ask our panelists, we'll take a look at what has been submitted in the Q&A. All right, so without further ado, I bring you Jack, Leah, Michael, and Kathy. Thank you. All right, so just leading into my first question, we're really here tonight to name the tension that exists in our movement and explore the friction between incremental kind of welfarist reforms and the total abolition of animal exploitation. And to start that conversation, I want to ground our audience in the perspectives, the diverse perspectives we have on our virtual stage. So please, each of you, take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself as an activist and your work for animal liberation. And we'll start with Leah.
Okay, hello. Thank you, Rachel, for hosting. I'm so pleased to be here again. I think this is such an important panel and topic that we're all discussing. I hope that it can start to be discussed more in animal advocacy. Well, anyway, I'm Leah Wilbourn. I don't know if I answered this last time, but I went vegan in about 2013, but it was kind of it wasn't an immediate thing. I certainly came across some things that we can get into later. But it took me, I would say, maybe like 5 to 8 years before I started getting really active. I didn't know any vegans, and so my first way that I just kind of started getting into, I guess what you could call activism, is in social media. And I just started sharing stuff on social media. Um, and then and then I got more involved. I volunteered at farmed animal sanctuaries and for another few groups. And I think it was in 2019 that I got quite a bit more involved with the Point Reyes issue that Jack knows all about. And that was the ranchers out here in our area in Point Reyes had put up a fence, and Tule elk were dying in the hundreds, and it's now up to 500 of them because of the dairy ranches. And I grew to be very frustrated noticing that nobody was really speaking up for the poor dairy cows that were right next to the elk. Everyone was so outraged about the wild animals, of course, as they should be. Anyway, now I work for In Defense of Animals, farmed animals campaign specialist, and I, on occasion, also work for Allied Scholars for Animal Protection and also the Human Hoax Project. And I'll keep it at that. That was my cat. He said hello.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Leah. Let's go to Jack next.
Hi, and thanks first of all to the San Francisco Vegan Society for hosting this great conversation. Well, what I hope will be a great conversation. And by the way, it's I think it's minimum fee, right, Rachel, is $25 to be a member. Is that right? So, and maybe
I think
maybe
if you're a student or senior, it's 20.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
it's
but
it's chump
25 is the individual.
so it's chump change. So if you're watching this, folks, in a recording, and you're anywhere in the Bay Area, and even if you're not, send them $25 and you'll actually get a note in the mail thanking you for joining, and it's a great community to be a part of. My name is Jack Gescheidt. TreeSpirit project founder. I've been a nature lover, big time, an animal lover all my life. And the forest advocacy came first with my creation of my TreeSpirit project, which, as you all know, of course, is the world's largest collection of naked tree hugging photographs. And it wasn't until 2014 that I became what is known as a cowspiracy vegan, meaning I saw a documentary that made the link between the greatest source of deforestation on the planet globally, which is to raise cows for human consumption, especially in the Amazon. But really, the more you learn, even the land behind me there, which is at Point Reyes Seashore, that area was originally farming, as much of the seashore was, and it was decimated by cattle and still is to this day. And we're still fighting that fight to get the elk more free than ever before and to get cattle ranching out of a national park, let alone off all land everywhere as you become educated about the issue. So I use the three A's: art, advocacy, and activism to raise awareness about the crucial role of trees and forests in the world. And then also, and more recently, because Cowspiracy connected the dots, it's amazing. I wasn't until my into my 50s before I understood. Well, we'll talk more about this, but I came to veganism through the environmental wing of the probably three wings to get to activism and become a vegan. Um, I'm kind of ashamed about that, and there's a lot more story around that, and it's cultural
Right.
conditioning to some extent. And thank you for the clock, Karen, because I could run the whole 90 minutes. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Mike.
My name is Mike Rupena, and thank you, Rachel, for hosting in the San Francisco Vegan Society. And like Jack said, I would encourage anyone and everyone to join. I mean, it's a wonderful community. Many of our activists are part of it. So, anyways, I've been with Anonymous for the Voiceless for over 5 years now. And I started off as a vegan about 6 years ago and went on to Vegan Marin on the Facebook page and just was really right after I went vegan, I knew I had to do more for the animals. And on that page, I met someone named Danny Patel, and probably many of you know her that are watching this right now. Wonderful, beautiful human being. She plugged me into AV, and then I met Thomas Shang, another beautiful human being who was the organizer at the time. And after 3 years of activism with AV, some things happened in the chapter. I won't go into that, but basically, I became the organizer after that. And it's a really beautiful family. of activists, and we do very powerful work on the streets, grassroots streets activism. And I'm really proud of this chapter. And so, yeah, that's who I am.
Thanks so much, Mike. And Kathy.
Hello, everybody. Again, thank you guys so much for letting me jump in at the last minute. Thanks for the invite, Jack. I really appreciate it. Um, I started my journey when I was 19, 20 years old. I jumped in to vegetarianism at the time. A girlfriend and I thought we'd get really healthy and take a bunch of vitamins and stop eating meat and thought that was the way to go. And then I started finding out a little bit here and there about what goes on with the animals and things. I thought, I just don't need to be harming animals, eating animals, anything like that. Of course, having no clue about the dairy industry. So by the time 2013 rolled around, I thought, why am I not being vegan now? Why have I not jumped onto that bandwagon? I didn't really have any friends that were vegan. But just kind of started looking around. I knew about PETA and Humane Society, and I was advocates for them. Just I'd always sign petitions and send letters, and I thought I knew those were the big players, and that's who handled all the vegetarian, vegan information and took care of animals and things like that. So, became vegan January 1st, 2013. Dropped 10 pounds immediately. That was just a nice little benefit. Um, and then as soon as Trump was elected the first time, I thought I need to do something about this. And so I started looking for my people, my tribe, as some people call it, and found Democrats. That didn't really work for me. No vegans, nobody I could really connect fully with. Jumped over to Greenpeace. I thought surely of course it's Greenpeace. Well, there's got to be vegans there. Yeah, not so much. There was a few. I shouldn't say not so, but okay, that's not my people either. So I felt kind of lost at that time. And then I started working to volunteer to have people sign petition for Prop 12. And that's when I met actual vegan activists. And so they showed me Anonymous for the Voiceless. I went to a couple of cubes. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. I like this. And just kind of fell into those groups and became an animal rights activist at that point in time. And so again, before that, I always thought it was your choice whether you want to eat meat or go vegan or vegetarian or whatever it was. I found out once I became an activist, not a choice. So here I am, and now I have Jolene's retreat, which I've been wanting to do since I retired about 6 years ago.
Wonderful. So really excited to get into the conversation now. So leading into sort of our next question, welfare washing relies on sanitization, of animal products. So for example, using imagery of green pastures and misleading labels like humanely raised to hide the brutal reality. Given how normalized this deceptive approach has become, I think very few consumers ever get a direct, unfiltered look at the violence within the system. And so I am very interested to hear from each of you what has led you to believe it's necessary to show the brutal truth of what happens to animals in industries that exploit them, and share your experience doing this, and under what circumstances you found that approach to be most effective. And we'll start with Michael this time.
Okay, so first and foremost, the reason that I am vegan is because I saw the documentary Dominion, and it only took me 15 minutes into the documentary to realize I was done. I was done with it. I was stopping. The uncomfortable feeling that I had in my chest, I just felt like a pit in my stomach. When I saw what was happening, I could see the fear in their eyes. I could see the pain. I could see them trying to escape, screaming for their lives. And so right off, I knew I was stopping, and I did. I stopped that day, and I just Googled. I got on Google and started digging and digging more and more and more. And as my activism journey started, I'm out on the streets, and now I'm seeing what's happening to people when they're walking by, looking at the screens. Some people are walking by and they stop in front of the screens and they're crying right in front of the screens in front of me. Some people are walking up laughing, and the next thing you know, but before they're leaving the conversation with me or with other activists, they're not feeling so good, and they're changing right in front of our eyes. You're watching their eyes, you're watching their body language, you're watching everything about them, their facial expressions, everything, it changes when you see them. When you're behind the mask in a cube of truth and you can see the expressions when they're walking by, you can see how people are affected by this footage. And as far as circumstances, which it's most powerful, accountability. That's one thing that we do at AV that other organizations do not do is hold folks accountable. That's what's missing from the movement, and that's what AV does, holding folks accountable. They understand that they're responsible for this. Now, a lot of us understand right when we see the footage, hey, I paid for this to happen, and I did. But when you actually talk to people and you have these direct conversations with them that are respectful, and you watch the footage alongside them, with them, you're watching beautiful things happen. You're watching people change right in front of you. You're watching people walk away questioning everything they've always believed because the truth, it cuts
Right.
through denial. The truth cuts through denial. It bypasses any rationalization. When you see what's happening, you can't help but it hits you here.
Jack, do you want to respond or build or offer just a different perspective?
Um, it's interesting. So I came in through the environmental wing, which I had occasionally seen slaughterhouse footage. I mean, my earliest memory, as I said in the previous webinar, was at age 14, and I was alone, didn't know any vegetarians or vegans. I was alone in the room. I mean, I wasn't alone at 14, out on the street, living in a garbage can. I was home with a black and white TV on. That's how old I am. There was black and white television, kids, and I saw it was a documentary called Meat on PBS in New York State, and it showed the slaughterhouse kill floor with, and I remember it. I remember it from over 50 years ago, seeing how a cow was killed in an assembly line, in a windowless room. And it just, I mean, that was a long time ago. Again, I didn't even know any vegetarians, and the word vegan didn't exist in the popular discourse. So it traumatized me. It didn't turn me away from being a vegan or vegetarian, but I didn't have anywhere to go with it. I mean, what Mike does, I'm really, what they do is so incredibly effective, which is, I mean, and each outreacher has their own shtick with it. And I've done a few cubes with Mike over the years, but that's his thing. And he's doing it every weekend or every other weekend. And you show someone the truth and people react in different ways. My friend Ray Cooper, World Peace Chocolate, says he kind of like is worried that people get traumatized by it and would move away. Well, maybe so, like me, but the world is different now. And you can look up and find out that, well, as Mike said, that's the truth. And it cuts right through. It cuts right through in the way that academic arguments and ethical arguments, academic speak, just doesn't work. I can say it's brutal. Well, just show it. I mean, for me, I've never seen Dominion. I've been a vegan for a decade and I've seen the trailer to Dominion and I've seen probably 8 or 9 minutes of the footage. And that's the stuff, that brutal truth is the stuff that makes me stay with veganism as opposed to I came in environmentalist, like, hey, I want to reduce my G8, my greenhouse gas footprint. Well, I can have, one burger, one steak, what does it matter? I'm still doing a great job, right? Well, if I think, well, it's just one leg of one cow, it's like, no way. I want no part of that industry. I'm just doing a different flavor of what Mike said, but I totally agree.
Thank you so much. And I think what I really heard from Mike was the accountability piece. That seems to be like the condition for effectiveness, I think that you're getting at, Mike. And with your example of seeing just a documentary, but then there was nowhere to go. Having that dialogue seems so essential. Kathy, I'd love to bring you in here. What's your experience showing the brutal truth of what happens to animals in the industries that exploit them?
I think originally or initially, people, again, when you're watching a movie, seeing clips, I've also done AV work as well, and it's very powerful for sure. People see it. And I think the hard part, which goes to Jack, is that it didn't stick, right? You didn't have anywhere to go. You didn't have anywhere to turn to. And I think that's a huge problem. Most people in general obviously love animals. I hear it all the time. Oh, I love it. Oh, that's so great that you do that. You have a sanctuary. I love animals. And sometimes if I'm feeling especially saucy or irritated or sassy or whatever, I'll say, oh, that's great. You're vegan. And they just kind of look at me like, what?
Mhm.
So that's that massive disconnect there where everybody who says they love vegan or says they love, well, that's a hard one. Anyway, I think one of the biggest problems is you can go and see all this stuff, you can have it in your face, But when you have nowhere else to go, and I'm not using that as a cop out, it's just the truth. It's the way it is. It starts to go away. It starts to fade, and then you're with friends, and then they're eating meat, and then they're eating cheese, and that. Well, again, to Jack's point, I just have a little. Well, just when I'm with these friends, I'm just gonna. And it's so easy to be scarred from these horrible things. I can't watch any of those, and I never went vegan because of those. I just knew it was the right thing to do. So I've never seen any of those. I've seen Cowspiracy. I've seen if I can't watch those, it's so horrible, and that puts me in a spiral. So for I'm not the person to watch those because that doesn't help me be a better activist. For me, going and when we used to go to the slaughterhouse, we just went to Grimius Farms, who has can't even call it a farm, but anyways, that's another conversation. But when I see those in person, that's what gets me motivated. It's horrible, it's awful, but that's what makes me think we have to stop this. And I think people seeing, if we could get people actually out to these places and see they exist, there's no filters, there's no editing, there's nothing. You are seeing these animals being tortured and abused, and this happens every single day, all day long. And when you see those, I think that's easier to cement. But again, that support factor is massive. When you go to the grocery store after having no clue, you don't know what to buy. So what do? Well, I'll get the milk this time. Next time I'll come back and I'll figure it out in the meantime. That's my take.
Thank you, Kathy. And Leah.
Well, it's what changed me. So, I just randomly came across it one evening back in 2013. And it was Paul McCartney's face popped up on YouTube. Hello, I'd like to tell you about what really happens to animals in not just the food system, but all industries that exploit them. Found out many years later that it was a PETA video. So I got to give major props to PETA. And instead of turning away, yeah, I watched the whole thing. I was by myself. And to Jack and his friend, our friend Ray, who says, "Oh, but it traumatizes people that you know that's not what you want to do." And I'm not saying I want to traumatize people, but absolutely I was traumatized, but in the best possible way because it seared my soul, and I would wake up in the middle of the night with their eyes in my face, the sounds of their cries. But for me, this was probably the biggest, I guess, spiritual epiphany of my life, is I realized that I was the monster to them. And I get choked up now. And in my job now, I have to watch footage. I have to sort through the footage to create these alerts. But to that point, I mean, when I do alerts for indefensive animals, for instance, just ventilation shutdown, the birds suffocating to death and dying of heat stroke over hours because they shut off all the air. That has gotten so much attention. People are just, they can't believe it. And then, by the way, I absolutely joining Anonymous for the Voiceless, having that experience. And Mike was one of the first people. In fact, he was there that day. So was Danny, who he mentioned. One of the most powerful, profound experiences of my life. Everyone should experience what that is like. I too have had grown men who look like football players start crying, and a woman who came to me and just said, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with this. I said, I hear you. I didn't know what to do with it either. And I didn't for years. But all I know is that that never has left me. And it helps me to remember. And I think it's just so essential. And there's so many different ways to use it. Um, Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, Dr. Faraz Harsini, PhD scientist, he shows 3 minutes of dominion at the end of all his talks in universities. So does John Sanban-Matsu, the author of The Omnivore's Deception, which is an epic, brilliant book. He shows footage in his universities because that's how important it is. And these people like Farm Transparency Project who have risked their lives to go in and get this truth out there, I feel I owe it to them to get it out there more for them on their behalf and of course for the animals.
Let's just staying with this. Do any of you want to respond to anything that anyone said?
Well, I would just say in a nutshell, yes, the truth can be traumatizing. I mean, the disconnect, to use that word, is the disconnect between I love animals and yet I eat them, which I did for 50 years, is by industry design. That is built into our culture. And every culture on the planet, I would think, with rare exceptions, certainly all the major civilizations, all have the disconnect. If you showed people how their food is made for the number of humans we're feeding now, it's not, hey, I'm going to go out and hunt one deer. You can't do that enough. There's not enough wild land because of cattle industry. There's not enough wild animals left because of the cattle industry, not because of human population being big. So you have to do them in industrialized settings. We'll get into the whole myth of the small family farm. It's not scalable. If I have a farm with, the size of the property behind me with 5 cows, well, that's one thing, but that's just me playing little gentleman rancher like Ted Turner. It's not enough to feed the world. We have so many humans on the planet. The only way to raise animals for them so it's not $450 for a steak, is to do it on a large scale, and then it becomes absolutely brutalized. And of course, Lee is a buddy of mine, so it's like, well, there's no way to, even if it was those 5 cows behind you, when you want to kill that cow to eat it, you've got to take a knife and stab it in the throat and cut it and have all the blood come out. There's no way to do that humanely, but there's a giant advertising industry, marketing industry, public relations industry spending literally hundreds of millions of dollars every year to pretend that's not the reality.
I have a sort of a follow. Oh, it looks like Kathy has a follow-up. Yeah.
I was just going to say very quickly, I absolutely love having people watch all this. I think it's wonderful for people to watch it and it hits people right away. You can't not be affected by that. It's horrifying. When I've done the cubes, a lot of times I say, can I just wear the mask and hold the computer? Because I can't deal with this. I can't try to watch that while I'm showing somebody because then I have a hard time not crying. And it's just so far beyond horrific. And I guess my thing is, how do we get that to stick? Like, how many people does that stick with? Because you can't unsee that. And so who are the people that actually see it once and go, oh my God, it's Leah, right? I mean, so how many Leahs of the world are out there? How many of those people can just see that and say, never again, I will never, ever touch meat again. And I think, like Jack's saying, the industry is so insanely powerful. It's so easy to get sidetracked if you don't have those reminders coming back in your face. Remember that video you saw? Remember that movie? Remember those calves that were being shoved into it? And I don't know what that is with the human. Well, I do. I mean, that it makes it so you don't have to take responsibility for that. And it's just easier that way. That's where my
Yeah.
biggest frustration is.
Yeah. I mean, I think people avoid it in all sorts of ways. And I was wondering, Leah and Mike, since you have a lot of experience with sharing footage, how do you handle like criticisms, or when people will say, well, this is not really representative? Like, do you get that? Do you find that people say, well, this is like isolated and this is extreme, this is not like the norm, this is not the norm, these are like bad operators, you're just exposing bad operators? What do you say to that?
Yeah, so you're talking about at the cube, if someone's looking at the footage and they're saying
Yeah,
this is the
what if they
worst case
dismiss it and
scenario.
say this isn't representative?
Yeah. So what we show at the cubes is actually standard practice. So it happens all across the world. Now, the footage from Dominion specifically is filmed in Australia, but it is standard practice footage and it actually has small farm footage included on it. So I let them know that first and foremost. But then I will also ask them, so in your mind, like let's say that you're saying that there's more humane ways to do this. So why don't you tell me about that? Why don't you tell me what a humane way for me to exploit you and for me to do this to you would be? What would you accept? What would be acceptable to you? You know? And also, I wanted to say one other thing about we're talking about how to make this stick. AV has refined their protocol every single year. It's tried and true every single year. They come up with new ways and more protocols. They update the protocol every year, and we really do walk folks through this. It's almost like a coaching session when we're talking to them now. We're bringing them through it as we're watching it with them. We're speaking to them in a respectful way. And we give them something to do. We give them a call of action. We hold them accountable. We put them in the animal's position and we give them a call of action at the end. And we give them support. We give them information at the end, right? And for anyone who's out there watching this right now, who's vegan or non-vegan, if you're non-vegan, go to cubatruth.com, see why you should be vegan and an animal rights activist. Because not only are we trying to get people to go vegan, we want to create animal rights activists at the same time. We want people to jump in our cube when they're right there on the spot and they go vegan. We want them to check it out. How does this feel being behind the screen, seeing what's going on in front of you? So when we talk to people, we're trying to get them not only to go vegan, but to become an activist right there on the spot.
Mike, if people want to reach
Um,
out to you, it's cubeoftruth.com. Sorry, Leah, you're next.
That's right, cubatruth.com. And if you are vegan and you're not out there with us, and for some reason you got this idea about this activism that is in people's face and that we're talking at them, I challenge you. No, I don't challenge you. I invite you. I invite you. I don't challenge you. I invite you to come out to our cube and check it out and be there with us and see what it's like. And you'll see what happens right in front of you. And then tell me how you feel about it after that. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. We'll
Leah,
go
I'm
to
sorry,
Leah
I cut
now.
you off. Yeah.
yeah, that's okay. Uh, the narrative is what needs to be completely reversed because when I hear objections from people about, oh, don't show that footage. Oh, come on, that's too extreme. That's not the way to do it. You're not going to convince people that way. Now, first of all, what is happening on the screen is what's extreme. Speaking up and simply showing the truth is not. So I really want to encourage vegans to really get that in their stomach. So to really remember that, because it's very easy to get intimidated, even by other vegans who just because it's uncomfortable for them because we all have our different personalities. We all have our ways that we communicate and ways that we don't want to communicate, which I get. But, a lot of time you'll hear, just really focus on the food, focus on one step at a time and the environment. And yes, everybody comes to this in a different way. I get that. But the vegans I know who became activists are the ones who got it in their heart because they were exposed to the truth. There's even a study, there's more than one, but the National Library of Medicine came out with a study that surveyed, um, uh, I think it was like 2,000 vegans. And they found that those who stayed vegan and didn't just become another ex-vegan were those who went vegan because they were exposed to the truth. And they went vegan for the ethical. Now that whole thing too is when people say I'm an ethical vegan. Well, that to me, that's like redundant because veganism is an ethical principle against the exploitation of animals. It's not a diet. It's not about your health. That's fine. The benefits are numerous, including saving the planet. And it can be healthy, but we have to be careful not to go around saying a vegan diet is healthy because it isn't necessarily if you're eating whole food plant-based. Um, anyway,
Hi.
yeah, I just really think reverse that narrative because whenever anyone tries to make you feel guilty or bad or like stop shaming me, there's nothing shaming about just showing the truth of what the victims are going through. You bring it back to the victims. Yeah.
If I may, and then Kathy, I don't mean to cut you off if you were going to go, but I just made a note of saying, what's extreme? What is extreme? Is it the endless killing of animals? It is, excuse me, it is the endless killing of animals, not our showing and talking about it. Just
That's
as
what I
what you
just said.
said. And by the way, I'm an example of what you're describing, Leah, which is I came in through the environmental doorway to veganism, and only then was I willing to actually look at the footage and think about it and feel it and get it in, as you said, heart, but also for me in the gut. And
Yeah.
that's what's really, I was then willing to look at it. Until then, I did what everybody does in our society, which is you have this incredible disconnect and you kind of know it's there. Like, I don't want to know more. Or as my mother said in 1979, when I came home from college and had read my first book about battery cage chickens, or basically any chicken treatment in any setting where they're going to be slaughtered. I said, Mom, do you know what they do to chickens where they cut off their beaks and they blah, blah, blah? And she says, No, 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 stop, stop. And I said, What? And she said, Don't tell me I won't be able to eat it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's somehow very, very seen as very, very gauche and unacceptable to bring this up. But you are all dead right. Showing the truth is not extreme.
You feel you're pandering
That's
to
the
us now,
truth
Rachel.
that is extreme, but showing it is just doing right by the victims. I'm going to move us on. The next question. When you think about the field, the movement for animal rights, there's lots of different fronts, lots of different strategies. In addition to the approaches that you are all pursuing or that we're really talking about today. And I'm interested to know what forms of activism, aside from what we've already talked about, do you think are most beneficial to the the effort to dismantle animal agriculture, for want of a better word? And we'll start with Jack this time.
Yeah. Um, Perfect. I was going to make notes because I did have something to say. Um, I guess my most important point is all methods are great. All of it. Whatever you can think of or want to do or express, that's your personality. That's where what you've been exposed to, what you feel called to speak about or talk about or share with your family or friends, or if you're an activist or want to be an activist, thank you. All of it is great. I mean, more the merrier, as opposed to, I think this is the best. I'm so amused when people say the best way is so, oh, in your opinion, that's the best way. And what it tells me is, oh, for that person seeing the slaughterhouse footage or showing it as Mike does in his cubes on the street in front of Macy's in downtown San Francisco is the best way. Well, Mike really believes that's the best way. I don't know that it's the best way. I think it's a great way. But if writing about it or going on social media, I mean, any of it, I'll come back around. I'll keep my initial foray short. But just all of these methods are great. People should be exposed to it. For me as an activist, I want people to be exposed to it all over the place in every single way.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. Mike, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like Jack's got a good point there. We do need like all methods because people may come by a cube and they may be affected from it and it may stick in their brain a little bit. They may walk away from the cube and then, oh wow, all of a sudden they see a fur protest downtown or something, they come across something at a rodeo or something, and just, the more we can affect them and the more we can get it in their heads that, hey, this is happening all over. Of course, for me, it's anything that's rooted in an abolitionist stance. That's how I feel, right? That's where I'm at with that. But I do believe that like we should be lifting everyone up around us who's doing activism, right? And we should, in all the different ways that we can help people to understand what's happening here, what they're a part of, and what they're paying for. So, yeah.
Who wants to go next? Kathy, do you want to jump in?
I was a teacher for 25 years, so education works for me. That's what I'm comfortable with. That's what feels good. That's why I do love AV. It's a comfort zone for me. But I also do love doing I also like doing speak outs. I love doing protests. I love doing actions. I love all of the things. I am not one to go in somebody's face and start screaming at them. That's not my thing. And I haven't really seen that work at the actions and events and things that I've been to. So I think education is huge, however you want to share that. And I think if you've got the truth on your side, like we do, whether you share articles, whether you show films, whether you bring someone to a slaughterhouse, whatever it is that you need to do, I think educating people is is the best way, as long as you have the truth behind you and you're not skewing the truth, you're not spouting lies, exaggerations, things like that, because then you get called on it and then now you're no longer credible. And they say, oh yeah, that was that person that told me that they killed this many chicks. No, they don't. That was a lie. I found whatever. So I think you need to be very careful when, if you're going to try to educate somebody or when you're educating somebody, that you definitely have your facts, your truth, and be able to share with them what is actually happening out there. And if you can get somebody to go with you to an event, that's even better. And if you can get them in a group where you can all have a conversation and they feel like they're part of a conversation rather being talked to or talked at, that they feel like they can contribute and they're not being ganged up on. So that, for me, education is huge.
Thank you. And Leah, when you address this point, could you also, we'll shift also into talking about forms of activism you think actually are detrimental
Well, do
to
I have
our
twice as
efforts?
long to answer this then?
Sure, sure.
Oh
Yes.
boy. Um, well, as far as and I was going to say that too. There's so many, we need all kinds of advocacy as long as the message is that zero animal exploitation is acceptable. Um, and of course, we need plant-based nutrition folks, and we need, vegan cooks and environmentalists and speaking about the planet and all of that. But I do think education exactly. I mean, speaking of children, I have a friend, Hillary. She just started with PETA, but they're an aspect of that organization that goes into schools and elementary school and middle school, I think. But I was going to say that I also think we're starting to get to a point where, like, for instance, the cage-free phenomenon that has kind of, so many animal protection organizations now have taken up that campaign. And speaking of PETA, they came out with a white paper they made it public just about a few weeks ago. And it's very, very well researched, and it basically is letting people know that it's not only is it not cruelty free, in some cases it's worse. But not only PETA with a huge range of experts that did all this research, but then there's another group of scholars, 40 international scholars, have also come out with a paper saying reconsidering cage free. But the main point about this is it's an open letter and they're going to be sending it. Now, these are scholars from all over the world that have different expertise in different areas, but they're all agreeing, wait a minute, cage free is taking us in the wrong direction because it's not educating the public about what is left out. The fact that all the male baby chicks are killed and so are their mothers. I mean, honestly, I find it kind of offensive if I see something about cage free in an animal protection organization saying, what a success, and isn't this wonderful that 40% of eggs are now cage free? And meantime, all of those eyes on that advocacy, all of those people and all that attention that they're getting, and they're not actually educating people about what really goes on in the egg industry. So sending, I think getting experts in all these different fields to back up what we were saying, and also to back up, like Climate Healers does so well. They're a vegan organization, but they advocate plainly with maturity at the United Nations. Zero animal exploitation. That is the answer. And it's not only going to save animals, it's going to save our planet and solve world hunger. And then creativity, filmmaking, art, writing, personal stories, music videos. People need to be moved, and artists do that. I've done all kinds of different outreach, like Hue Milk, kind of as if we're passing out human breast milk and it gets the conversation started. Oh, that's disgusting. Well, why? Why are you drinking milk from an entirely different species and whose mother was murdered, and so are all of her male calves? And even that right there opens up the conversation. And what? That was a seed, I have to say, that was planted with me before I came across what I saw that night. I overheard someone say it's too bad that mother dairy cows are killed. Just that one piece of information opened my eyes like nothing else except seeing the footage. So it's so important for us in our everyday lives also to just start getting used to and practicing
Right.
simply telling the truth and speaking truthfully. And by the way, did you know when I'm in line at a cafe, I bring this up. When I get my coffee and I order oat milk, I'll sometimes say, "Yeah, no mother baby cows had to be killed for this. Isn't that great?"
Do you
That
say
right
it,
there, that barista now has a new piece of information.
do you say it that way, Leah, or are you screaming at them as you always
Oh,
do?
yes, I'm screaming at them in rage. No.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Leo. Well, let's continue. Like, I want to hear more other what other people think about forms of activism that are actually detrimental to the effort to abolish the system.
For me, two things come to mind. I don't want to name names. I don't think that helps, but there's one activist of unknown gender, or excuse me, not I won't identify gender, who seems to always get into arguments with people. And, people come on to her, oops, him, them, and rip the sign of the hand. And it's really always conflict. And I'm so torn about it because I'm not that kind of an activist. So back to my preaching equanimity. Well, Jack, maybe that works for that person. Maybe that's okay, but I don't think it does. And it gives actually Kathy used a phrase that someone's, I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember your exact words, Kathy, but you said, I don't think screaming at somebody. I wanted to actually kick up a little dust and talk about the stereotype of the screaming in your face vegan activist who, how do you know someone's vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you in 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 10 seconds. There is some people that do that, some vegan activists that do that, and they're angry and justifiably outraged. I would say they also have their own kind of personal axe to grind. I was taught as a kid with my family in a divorce with an older brother to be the nice guy, so that's my personality type. Not always, but that's kind of the surface. So other people are really angry and they're going to look for a way to be angry. Well, this is a great movement to be angry about. I don't think that's effective. And then I'm running out of time with our great timekeeper's going to catch me here. But I did want to also talk about what Leah said. There you go. Cage-free eggs and ban factory farming, I think, are really counterproductive, not just phrases, but strategies. I'll wrap up by saying when someone says, well, cage-free eggs are bad, the takeaway from the general public is, well, then I'll excuse me, cage-free eggs are better, excuse me, then I'll just eat cage-free eggs. To Leah's point, no, all eggs are horrifically brutal. And ban factory farming, we might get into that as a phrase. It's super popular with some groups whose work I respect, but that tells people, oh, okay, you're right, factory farming is bad. I'll have the good small family farms products instead, which are equally horrific, if not more so.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about that. We hear a lot of that at our cubes too. People will come through and they'll say, "Oh yeah, well I get the cage-free eggs, or I get the pasture-raised eggs," and that welfareism thing that Leah was talking about with like the cage-free eggs. And when people start talking about that, and it becomes about how the treatment or cage-free, we all know they stuff 20,000 chickens in a pen. They don't have any room to move anyways. But it's not about the how they're being treated. It's about they're being used to begin with. They're being exploited. And abolitionist stance is really the key to everything here. And that's what needs to be addressed. And one more thing about the effective ways of activism. I wanted to say what Kathy does at the sanctuary is incredible. And you're right about the education part. What Leah does, talking about this, what Jack does, talking about this, and what a guy named Gary Yourofsky used to do back in the 80s when no one was doing it,
Oh.
uh, setting animals free and becoming banned in many countries, and then going out to colleges and like Faraz does now, right? From ASAP, going out to colleges and educating people on this at colleges, letting them know at that level, and having thousands of people and hundreds of people in front of you. and actually educating them on this. And that makes just a ton of difference to me. That's seems like the way, you know. Yelling at people in the grocery stores, I've seen that too. And you see people, they actually get irritated. They actually want to get through and get their, you know, get their animal parts or whatever, right? And they're pissed off that your people are in their way. They're on a megaphone, and I don't see that being very effective either, you know.
Yeah. Kathy, did you want to add anything?
I don't think I think I'd agree with everybody else. The screaming in your
Yeah.
face. And I know people say, well, that gets attention. So somebody's heard somebody screaming and yelling. What are they screaming and yelling about? And they're all over YouTube or, TV, whatever it is. That maybe it does hit a few people if they see it somewhere, they've seen it on video, YouTube or whatever, and they go, yeah, there was some person that was yelling and screaming about eggs or something like that. What? And maybe they go and do their own investigation about it. And like Jack said, maybe that does work. Maybe for a few people who are going to take that next step, maybe they're already on the fence of, man, I've heard a lot of people, oh man, now this other person is saying this. You know what? I should probably look into this because I keep hearing it wherever I go. I keep seeing this stuff on social media. I think that's far and few between, but maybe if you get another activist or two out of it, I don't know. It depends on how many people you turn off, I guess, right? We want to be on the positive side of gaining activism, not losing it.
May I add to that? Add to what
Yeah.
Kathy said? You hit the nail on the head there, Kathy, when you said, well, what are they saying through the bullhorn? What is the message that's being said and getting across? And if the message is this one bad place is terrible, boycott this one bad place, what does that convey to the public? Oh, that one bad place is bad. Okay, I'll make sure I don't buy my products from that one bad place. Oh, let me go look for this small local organic free range, whatever it is at Trader Joe's, or any grocery store. I think exposing humane washing, we can also get into, there is a difference between humane washing and welfare washing. But the marketing lies and that our subsidies or taxpayer dollars are paying for us to be lied to as well. Anyway,
Leah, would you
Yeah,
define that?
100%.
Would you define the difference between I don't actually know specifically humane washing and welfare washing. Is that easy to do?
well, and I'm not an expert to define it. I shouldn't define it, I guess. I just, it's a new phrase that has been popping up more in my little circles of activists I really admire. And actually, we're having the Humane Hoax online conference in a few weeks, and that's kind of one of the main topics is welfare washing in particular, not just humane washing. So what it's about, it's a form of humane washing, but it's to do with animal advocates themselves. So when advocacy starts to become so focused on exactly what Mike was saying, which was treat them better. As long as they suffer less, it's a success. Less cruelty, just reduce. That's not an abolitionist message. It's not a liberation message. So, a lot of organizations now, just in the last like 15 years or so, it's become so dominant that what you mostly see a lot of times is better welfare in their campaigns. And you're not seeing nearly as much advocacy for veganism as the solution to animal suffering. And some organizations don't even use that word, but some organizations still plainly say we are against all exploitation of animals. But a lot of organizations don't. And that is a slippery slope. But I have to say, it certainly brings in more donations from non-vegans, because isn't that a lovely, safe message to be getting across to the public? You care about animals? Yes, so do we. We just need to treat them better, leaving out the fact that they're being used and killed. So that's kind of welfare washing in one sentence. Yeah.
So that's a great segue, actually, because that was my next question. Why do you think so many animal protection organizations do not advocate for veganism as the solution? And you've advanced one of the possibilities, which is that they depend on donors
Yeah.
not being turned off, right, by that message. They don't want to change their habits. The donors don't want to change their habits. The organizations don't want to alienate the donors.
Right.
And I'm curious, does somebody want to complicate that picture? Are there other reasons that we should be talking about? Jack?
I was
Mike?
just going to be playful and say what you said. It's about money. It's just about money. I mean, I think people are chasing the donor dollars, and organizations need to fund themselves, including organizations that do good. But back to Mike's point or word he used, which is we shouldn't be using animals. And that was kind of an abstract term for me when I was new to the movement. And now I think it's a critical word. I don't know that I always lead with it because it's not a picture word or a violent word or a stab a cow in the throat, which is like, oh my God, that's upsetting. Don't, Jack, that's so horrible. As opposed to I'm using a cow. What do you mean I'm using a cow? What does that even mean exactly? It's more of an academic or an ethical or an intellectual term, but it really does capture in the chat here. Corinne says, but Jack, you admit scale matters when I was picking on the factory farms thing. Well, of course, scale matters, but that's I don't know, is that welfare washing? You'll help me with this, Leo, the definition. But take a giant cow farm down in Central Valley. 100,000 animals. Terrible, terrible. It's dirty, it's filthy. You smell it. It's cow schwitz. You smell it as you drive by an I-5 down to LA from San Francisco. Okay, we'll break that up. We're going to take 10 different plots of land, much bigger, and put 1,000 cows on each. Isn't that better? You could argue it's going to be kinder to those animals. They'll be on grass and et cetera. But to Mike's point, the
I would never
important
argue that.
to the important point, well, I'm the layman, not you. You're educated about
Okay.
it, but to the lay public who I'm hoping is listening to this broadcast, not just us vegans, to Mike's point, it's still treating the animal as a commodity. It will still be tagged in the ear and, well, tail docked on pigs, beaks cut off chickens, and killed as a child, and babies taken away from mothers. And I can go on with the litany of horrific brutalities every single cow in the industry is objected to, including especially an early death. So I wouldn't waste my time as an advocate fighting the industry saying, well, let's make it a little bit better. That's the politician's job. If we activists don't speak the hard, plain, brutal, complete truth, no one will. That's our job. For me anyway, my definition of an activist is you speak the truth. And that
Right.
quote I always love to throw in here to wrap up, um, St. Augustine, I say it every time. Everyone, oh yeah, here goes Jack's quote. The truth is like a lion. There's no need to defend it. Let it loose and it will defend itself. There is no way to kill an animal that doesn't want to die.
Thanks, Jack. I love those words.
I'd like to
Oh,
add, in addition to using, enslaving, because that that enslavement and domination mindset, really, I think that's the deeper cause of all of this. Is, of
mhm.
course, religion has a huge role in this, which is God made animals for us. So I think it all kind of stems back to that. Um, but just this, we have more power, so we can dominate, enslave other beings who are weaker than us. And that has bled into society and all kinds of forms of oppression. So it's challenging that, the way that we view animals. If we're only focusing on the terrible things, even, if we're only focusing on the standard practices and the killing and all that, I think that's a mistake. I think we have to challenge how people are viewing animals, and that we need to be getting across to people we don't have a right to enslave anyone. If you
Mhm.
don't want to be enslaved yourself, don't do it to others. Other animals are just like us. What we have in common is what matters. We all feel pain and can suffer. We want to live. We want to be with our families and experience life and be safe. And that's
The
it.
other issue, though, I'm sorry to interrupt, but follow up on what I'm going to say here, please, just to interject. Also, well, we've been doing it for thousands of years. This has been our ancient relationship with animals, but of course, things in society has changed. We no longer need to do what we used to do, right?
It's unnecessary?
It
Today.
is unnecessary. And I want to steer us back to my original my question and hear from Mike actually. Um, going back to my question about why so many animal protection organizations are not advocating for veganism as the solution. Do you also agree that it's out of fear of losing donor funding? Or do you think there's any possibility that those organizations genuinely believe in incrementalism as the only way to get a foot in the door with legislators?
I mean, it could be you'd have to go to the top and talk to the folks at the top to see, but I do believe it's about money and donors, and I also believe that they don't want people to think that they're extreme, right? Because then they would be extreme and they wouldn't get any donations if they were extreme, right? So yeah, I do think that it is about the donations, but I can also see what the question that you're asking there, and that's a possibility too. It's a mindset, right? It's a perspective, and what Leah was saying earlier and Jack, as far as like the mindset that people have, we always ask people at the Cube, hey, do you believe that animals are here for you, or do you think that they exist for their own purposes? What would you agree with, And people really stop and think about that question, and they're like, I see. You're right. A lot of times that really hits home when we ask them that question. And that's the exploitation mindset, is that they exist for humans' selfish purposes. Whereas a vegan realizes, hey, they exist for their own purposes, not for us. And, the religion thing really does, people misunderstand that to think that, hey, they're here for us, but actually you have dominion over them. So are you going to protect them or are you going to exploit them? What are you going to do? You know?
They were here long,
Yeah.
long before us, millions of years before us. We're new on the scene and taking over and screwing up everything, largely because we eat animals.
Yeah. Kathy, did you want to say anything? Did you want to jump in at
Yeah,
all?
I definitely think when I came into it, I was trying to get people to sign the petition so pigs could get a little bigger space, right? I thought that was my first thing I did as an activist. Okay, woo, I'm going to do a good thing. Let's get these pigs some more space. Um, I didn't know the horrors of any of these things. So I thought I was doing a good thing, right? Well, if we can just do this, of course people would sign this because everybody loves animals and they want to get more space and I thought that would plant a seed for people, right? So they would continue on from there. And I think yes, money is is all it seems to be the ruler 99% of the time. Money and power is how this world works. So um, I do think organizations also have good intentions behind it. The thought is, okay, well, if we can at least get these many people heading in this direction, we'll start here and then we can go from there. Because if we start here and we get nobody, now we've got nothing. If we start here and we can start funneling some people in that direction, and then we can really get where we want to go from there, then we can get the rest of those people to get on board with, um, totally total non-use of animals. So I think that's also another way people feel that maybe that's easier if you can get some rather than none. And then later you can get the rest of the folks that you couldn't get by just saying, go vegan, period. No humane washing, no, doing a little bit less. And I remember somebody told me, we were having a conversation at some point where somebody said, yeah, that whole thing is just like, oh, well, if you only beat your kid a couple times a week, is that okay? It's better than the guy that beats their kid 7 times a week. And some people get horrified trying to compare that. But when you think of it that way, it's kind of like, ah, crap. Yeah, you know what? That's probably, let's just stop altogether instead of doing the incremental. So I get both sides. I've been on both sides of it of thinking, well,
Right.
at least I can get some people rather than not at all. But as we start talking and hearing more about it, it's kind of heading down the other side.
Thanks, and thank you, Kathy. It looks like Leah wanted to jump in.
Yeah, yeah. I do think that there are folks who really do, they have good intentions. They really do think that that's the answer. They think that's the way. That yeah, but most people care about animals. So if you can get them to sign a petition, for a little more space for Prop 12 and incremental change, then eventually people are going to start to get it. But here's the thing that incremental change is going to happen regardless. The world is not going to go vegan overnight. We all know that. And that is something that people love to say to vegans who simply want to advocate against exploitation. Well, the world's not going to go vegan overnight. No kidding. However, how much longer is it going to take if we are timid and so afraid to advocate against any use of animals? Because there are people like all of us here who we got that message and we understood it. And people respect honesty, I've found. People know when you're trying to placate them and get them to sign something. And because you're overly concerned, you don't want them to be offended and you want them on your side. But I think most people know when you're holding back and you're not being genuine. And um, but I do understand. I do know that I think a lot of animal advocacy nowadays, the bigger organizations, a lot of those folks really do believe that the best way is incremental change, welfare reform, working on small little gains. But the issue is, when you're working on those small gains, are you educating the public about what's really going on? And are you advocating for veganism or not? Are you advocating for
Time.
reducing is fine? You're pushing the ball further down the road. And you're not simply addressing what must be addressed. And here's the other thing, urgency. We don't have any more time. Neither do the animals. Animals are being killed right now in slaughterhouses. It is insulting and disrespectful to any victim to be saying, well, just like Kathy said, I've used that in my talks. It's very true. I'll only abuse children a few days a week. I'll try to not be racist a few days a week. It's a weak message. And it doesn't mean you're extreme if you're simply saying that's not acceptable. Because we need more people who are high-minded and mature and know how to speak. And we need experts in all different fields. And we also do need to try to bring in other justice movements with us. As long as we are advocating the way we are, and we're connecting other human beings to injustice, that this is an injustice in the same way that the oppression that you're against regarding humans is an injustice. So getting people to understand that and understand that all these different forms of oppression are connected while not watering down the message to please people and hope that they like you. Because most people don't change in their comfort zones. And I had to be very uncomfortable before I changed, and that's okay. That's where growth happens.
Thanks. Thanks, Leah. All right. I just want to say to the audience, I'm going to be moving to the final question that I have for our panelists shortly. And it would be a great time to put questions in the chat. It's 7:10. We have 20 minutes left and we need a little bit of time to wrap up. So my last question, what is your view on direct action and how far should we go as activists to change the systems and achieve animal liberation? And Michael, let's start with you this time.
As far as we can. I mean, I'm thinking that it depends on the individual and what part of their life they're in, you know. I'm 56 years old. I have a job. I have a life. I have everything. I can't be thrown in jail tomorrow. Okay. I got things. I got responsibilities I got to take care of. But if people are out there that are so passionate about this and they're in a position in their life where they can do other things and they can, they can make those sacrifices, then yeah, I mean, I say take it all the way, take it as far as it can go because like Leah said, the animals, this is urgent. The animals, they need us. They need us now. Everybody, all vegans and yeah, I mean, it depends on what stage of life you're in and where you're at as an individual, and what kind of activism you do. But I have just the utmost respect for, we just saw Zoe Rosenberg go to jail, and I mean, what she did was it made an impact, and the Christo Forest, the people that go into these slaughterhouses and they take this footage that, like Leah said, I feel like we owe it to them too, to get it out there and get it out on the streets. It's important work. And they're risking so much. They're putting so much at stake. I mean, Thomas Chang, the organizer for AB at the time when I came in, he almost lost his life at a Reichardt Duck Farm. I mean, he put their life on the line, and so I mean, I think we should take it as far as we can. It depends on the individual, though.
Who'd like to follow Michael? Can I call on you, Kathy?
That was the first thing I thought as soon as you said how far. The exact words were as far as you can. That's what I was thinking in my head as well. And if you turn it around to try to put it in perspective for other people as well, what would you do for a human, right? If a human was about to be killed, if a human was being treated horrible, um, unfortunately, most people think humans first. I do not. I think animals first, and I'm sure we all do. It's why we do what we do. But if you can try to put that in perspective for other people, think about that. What would you do for your kid? What would you, or their companion animals, right? Well, what would you do for your dog? What would you do for your cat? So I think whatever needs to be done, do it. It's time is of the essence. These calves that are at Grimius Cattle Company right now that are in crates that are 11 square feet. That is insane. They have no protection there whatsoever. We can't just kind of hang out and look through and be like, oh man, that's a bummer. Wow, those calves are in there. No, something needs to be done. Something needs to happen. So whatever needs to be done is what we got to do.
Thank you, Kathy. Jack.
So I agree with what Kathy and Mike have said, which is it's very individual and do as much as you can. But I would add, I mean, this is an example of these people have become everyone here in this panel, and the tiny little woman up above with a cat who's doing their timekeeping tonight have become friends. So if you're a vegan already, it's like, how can I become involved as an activist? Oh, I don't like to do this or that. There's always ways to get engaged. And what I would do is encourage you to think you'll find more friends. And then you'll end up going to some vegan Thanksgiving where you can finally really let your hair down and be with a whole room full of people that think and feel the way you do about animals, that they're precious, precious beings, whether it's the cat in, I don't know whether people can see, Karen's got a cat over her shoulder, and cats and dogs we obviously have access to, and more people will connect to them. But I fell in love with these Thule elk behind me at Point Reyes Seashore. And just the privilege of standing within 10 or 20 feet away from these majestic animals, which are like wild, and you have to go to a national park to see them. Well, it's right near San Francisco. You can drive in and see them. And I fell in love with them. And that just motivated me to advocate for getting the cows out of the park, which are another animal livestock we exploit at the expense of the wild animals, including the elk. But then I met all these wonderful activists, and I feel so connected. I've become friends with Leah. We met out there doing actually Mike as well. I just realized. Oh, in fact, Kathy, I think you came to some as well. So all three folks here, maybe some of you I met there the first time in the park. Do whatever activism you're nibbling at the edges of. Show up for a cube one time. Check it out. Go to Kathy's, retreat, Jolene's retreat, and meet Gertie, the baby cow I just fell in love with, as well as some giant 300-pound pigs, and just follow your heart, follow your heart, follow your bliss. But I prefer by Joseph Campbell. But follow your heart, and you'll be thrilled at where it leads you. Especially if you really do love animals, this is the path to whatever extent you're willing to walk it.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have another question. We don't actually have a question from the audience, but I have another one. And it kind of goes back to this whole topic about the welfarist approach and trying to understand like where people are coming from. Because in order to undermine it, I do think we have to understand like why it's so persuasive. You know, this idea of steps in the right direction, you know, like the incremental approach. So what do you think is the strongest argument advocates of the welfarist approach make? And at the risk of asking you to repeat yourself, like, how do you counter that strongest argument that they would make? And I'll start with Leah.
Okay. The first thing that comes to mind, which I understand, I've heard it a lot, the strategy behind, for instance, cage-free is, well, if we make these producers go cage-free, they have to make all these changes. They have to take the cages out of these huge industrial sheds. Okay, that will make prices go up and then sales will go down, and that will help the animals. But actually, there's actual studies now that have been done on this that it didn't make the consumption of eggs go down. It just shifted consumers from conventional eggs to cage-free eggs, but it didn't change anything about their consumption because they haven't been educated. They still, all those folks that have been, so reading about cage free and how successful it is, still have no idea that all the male baby chicks and their mothers are slaughtered. That's one kind of example. And then I think another thing is one of the bigger arguments of why just talking about better welfare and not being extreme by advocating for veganism is to just you want to appeal to as many people as possible. You want to make sure that you're not coming across as one of those vegans, right? We don't need everybody to understand and to like us. All social justice movements, really, and now we go back to that famous quote, but by Margaret Mead, which is, it just takes a handful of thoughtful, committed citizens to change the world. That's the only thing that ever has. And 3.5% really is the tipping point. That's all you need to get a movement underway so that it actually succeeds. So we don't need everybody to like us. We don't need everybody to agree with us. We need to get the people who understand and who are in there, like, sitting at home right now in bed, knowing that this is true, but they're not having examples of people who are just out there plainly telling the truth. That's what people need to see. People get inspired by that. That's what I was inspired by. The handful of incredible activists and bold organizations that were speaking truthfully and saying, no, none of this is okay. I was like, wow, that's the message that needs to be getting out there. Yeah. Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Rachel.
Michael, I think he could lip read because he had already unmuted himself. Just as, similar sort of a variant on that, I guess, like, how do you respond to the person who says perfect's the enemy of the good? That's another variation, I think, of the welfarist argument. You're making perfect the enemy of the good.
I'm sorry, if you're making perfect.
Oh, perfect the enemy of the good. Have you heard that expression?
Oh, I haven't. No, I had something else I was going to say though, if that's
Sure, go
okay.
ahead.
I was going to say that a lot of people will say like, well, it's going to reduce suffering right now, right? Like we want more space for the pigs or what have you. This is going to reduce suffering right now, and it's going to make a difference right now for them, right? And they really believe this, like, hey, this is going to make a real difference. And my argument to that is that this is long term, this is going to hurt the movement because again, You're advocating that it's okay to still use these animals, to still exploit them, and it's not abolitionist at all, right? I mean, and so reducing the suffering. What do you mean you're reducing the suffering? What they have a little more space to roam around in, but you're still doing the exact same thing to them. You're still going to exploit them. You're still going to cut their teeth out when they're babies. You're still going to castrate them. You're still going to dock their tails, right? You're still going to prod them down the kill line in the slaughterhouse when they're trembling with fear and screaming for their life. You're still gonna slice their throat. I mean, so that's what I've heard before, and it just no.
We do have two questions now in the chat. So let's start with I think it's Karen or Karen. What does research say about what is most effective? This is a question that I have wondered myself. And I know of at least one panelist who has looked into this question. And Leah, you mentioned a paper, right, that you pointed me to. So I don't know if you want to summarize that. And if anyone else wants to take a crack after Leah.
Well, I mean, yeah, there have been some studies that have shown that people stay vegan because of going vegan for the animals and the truth that they saw. Now, there's different research, and people will cite different papers. It really kind of, it's not set in stone. If we all knew the answer, I think maybe a lot more people would be vegan by now. I just think we've been going in this direction for quite a while now, that people thought, nope, advocating for veganism doesn't work. So let's start advocating for better welfare. We'll get more people on our side. But the question I have is, well, what was that advocacy? Was it organized? Was it among the leaders in animal advocacy? Or were they starting to realize the Cattlemen's Association in the 80s started these ideas of starting to create humane labels? And some of them got in with some of these advocates and said, hey, let's work together. You'll get further. Let's work together. And little by little, this movement started watering down their message. Now, I think it's time to rethink the direction that we're going in. Yeah, there's so much more I could say, but.
You're muted again, Rachel. Rachel, you're muted.
I keep doing this. I had some background noise, so I keep muting myself. Anyone else know of research? If not, then we should move to the next question.
I don't think there's any.
I'm sure, but
I don't think there's any research on it. I really don't. I was having this conversation with
well,
someone else.
Elliot Ryan has posted something that I think, yeah, Karen can post the Fornalytics, Tactics in Practice, the Science of Protests and Demonstrations. That looks like it's worth a look. Elliot also had a question to help us end on a lighter note. He would like to ask the panel to share any silly or ridiculous anti-vegan arguments they've encountered in their outreach. Nice question.
We don't have another 90 minutes.
Well, each of you could take 90 seconds and share the silly and ridiculous arguments you've come across.
I'd like to take 30 seconds to go back to something I wanted to say more than I wanted to be silly right now. The other argument is change is gradual, so we must advocate for gradual change. I think that is absolute hooey. Absolutely not. The only reason change is gradual, yeah. That's even when us activists are screaming at the top of our lungs for no slavery or women's rights or the right to vote or don't kill the immigrants. I mean, that's so patently false on the face of it. It's slow enough when some of us speak the truth. We must speak the full truth. That's what we activists do. The in the middle, wishy-washy, that's the job of the politician. It's a necessary job, but it's not one I take as an activist. Someone else can tell a silly story.
I just agree with Jack. Ask for what you want. You start there. You ask for what you want. You don't start with, well, maybe a little bit, then you'll never get it. Anyway. As far as silly, I would just the same old one, but someone very close to me in my family used it, and I was really, really like actually very amused because I'm like, wow, she fell for it too, which is the classic. Well, plants are alive too. After we'd had about a 20-minute conversation, I'd honestly knocked down a lot of the objections, and then that's what it came down to. Well, and then I just basically said, okay, so chopping a carrot and stabbing a puppy is the same thing? You know that's not the case.
I'm an obnoxious activist. I thought we were going to end with not me next, but someone with a call to action, what we recommend people do.
Oh, we will.
Okay.
I have
That's
two.
after the Q&A, Jack.
I had one also with plants, and the guy actually told me that he's heard plants scream before. So he's heard plants screaming. They were screaming for their life, I guess. Maybe when he was cutting his lawn or something. I don't know. But at the cubes, you hear all of them. Animals eating other animals, plants have feelings, and all of those excuses. And it's just it gets. I don't know. We're getting less of them these days, but you used to hear all of them. And if you go on Earthling Ed's 30 excuses, um, I never thought I would ever even need to know those, like how to defend those. But then when I started going into AV, I'm like, wow, like this person took me through 10 of those already. This other person took me through another 10. It's crazy.
Kathy, do you want the last word on silly,
I do farmers
silly
market here for
arguments?
Jolene's retreat in Occidental, and so I had somebody next to me who was doing a table of stuff. And we're talking about veganism and things, and why I'm vegan, and all that. And she said, "You know what? If I ever had to come back, I would want to come back as a Sonoma County cow." And I looked at him, I said, "Do you want to be dead when you're 18 months?" And he just kind of looked at me and said, "Are you kidding me? They can do whatever they want. They're just hanging out on the grass all day. They don't have to worry about a thing." I said, "Yeah, except for dying when you're 18 months. And they don't even spend all their time out there on the grass. That's a short period of time as well." So, yeah, but
Especially,
Wow.
that's what people see.
Wow. Well, that one's amazing. I've never heard that. Okay. Well, thank you all. This has been a really fascinating conversation. What call to action or words do you want to leave the audience with tonight? And Michael, can you go first?
Well, I would say a call to action for the non-vegans out there would be to go to cubeoftruth.com and watch the documentary Dominion and really watch it and see how it makes you feel. And imagine yourself in their position and just ask yourself, why am I doing this? I'm responsible for this. Realize you're responsible for it and ask yourself if that's the person you really want to be. Is that really who you want to be? Because it comes down to character at the end of the day. What kind of character is that? And if you're vegan, your call of action is to come out to a Cube of Truth with us. We have a cube coming this Saturday from 2 to 5 down in Union Square at Powell and Geary. And so we're going to be out there standing strong for the animals. And you can come out and just hang out and listen to conversations. Just shadow us, shadow myself, shadow Elliot, shadow Lucas, shadow one of our outreachers, and just hear how we talk to people and see how people respond. And I think you'll feel differently if you had some type of assumption about how it is out there with us.
Thank you, Jack.
I'm against gradualism for activism, but I'm for gradualism for becoming an activist. So, wander into the shallow end of the pool, go to a cube, visit Kathy's Jolene's retreat in Occidental. This Tuesday night, there's a San Francisco Vegan Society is hosting a dinner at 6 o'clock. If you're in San Francisco or in the Bay Area, go have dinner and meet a whole bunch of nice people, including little Karen up above on the screen. She's only this big, and you'll be so glad you did. If you are a vegan, of course, and if you just love animals and you're kind of veg curious, as we say, just get out of your house, put down the damn screens, the computer, the phone, and go hang out with other people who really care about the animals on this planet. You will be so glad that you did. There's so much more to gain than there is to give up.
Thank you. Kathy?
I have two things actually. First one is go find a vegan group. So you have some support. You can find all the great places to eat, the great places to go, great things to do. That's amazing. And then, yeah, I'd love you to come to Jolene's retreat if I'm too far away. But honestly, going to a sanctuary was massive. That's made me want to be a founder of a sanctuary, made me want to open this place. There's nothing like it. I just cried when I got there, and I saw these cows that I got to hug and love, and I got licked by a cow and kissed by a cow, and that was so powerful for me. I literally knew that first time I went, this is what I want to do. And you can look in their eyes and you see these animals were saved. How many have not been saved? And so that's huge. That was so powerful for me, is to go and look in their eyes, think about your companion animals. What's the difference when you go there and you see them hanging out, laying in the sun, playing in the mud, getting the zoomies, playing with a soccer ball? Wow, you know what? My companion animals do the same thing. It's pretty eye-opening. There's a Gertie girl.
Oh, there she is.
And lastly, Leah, I know you've put some stuff in the chat about an upcoming webinar.
Oh, well,
What closes out?
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, the Humane Hoax annual conference is coming up on March 17th. That link is in the chat. I will be one of the speakers, and then also Dr. Faraz Harsini of Allard Scholars for Animal Protection, and Layla Hassam, who's an incredible activist. If y'all haven't heard of Project Phoenix, she was also with Animal Think Tank. Anyway, I was asked to put in a plug for that. But I agree with everyone here, and I just want to encourage everyone to, of course, join organizations that plainly advocate for veganism. There's just no time to kind of keep doing this welfare stuff. I mean, anyway, I just we're running out of time. So please support the organizations that advocate truthfully and plainly. Some of them, just a handful that come to mind: Free from Harm, Animal Outlook, Climate Healers, Our Honor, Apex Advocacy, Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, and of course AV. And some words to leave the audience with. Well, in times of slavery, like, none of us know, like, all of us are white here, right? We don't know how we would have acted, what we would have said if we lived in times of slavery and everyone around us thought it was perfectly fine and normal to own human slaves. And everyone around you was just like, no, you have a problem with it? No, it's cool. It's cool. Don't speak up. Don't say anything. What would you have done? I would think that most of us would like to think we would have said or done something. So we are in that now with the animals. A century from now, maybe less, our species is going to look back on what we've done to animals with shame. So what side of history do you want to be on? One other thing, I highly recommend everyone go look up Invasion of the Movement Snatchers. It's a fantastic article that was written by James Levesque in 2006, and he basically predicted the direction that the animal protection and animal rights movement would be going in, and he was right. And then finally, Alice Walker, the author of A Color Purple, activist, Black woman, said, "The animals of the world exist for their own reasons. They were not made for humans any more than Black people were made for whites or women were created for men."
Beautiful quote. Well, thank you. Sincere thanks to each of you panelists. Really, really appreciate you being here this evening. I'm sorry we've run a few minutes over, but thank you so much for your unwavering commitment to the animals and the clarity you brought to all the discussion tonight. It was really great. I hope it gave people new insights and connections to carry forward, things to look into. I also want to thank Karen, who I think has probably been off camera for all the audience, but she's been my great co-host. And I also want to thank all the members of SFVS, the San Francisco Vegan Society, whose engagement and honestly ongoing financial support make these kinds of events possible. So if you're not yet a member, I hope you'll visit our website, join us, support our work. We hope to do more such conversations like this one in the future. Thank you all for coming, for being part of the movement that says the future is vegan and the time is now. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, San Francisco
Thank
Vegan
you,
Society.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Kathy, for jumping in
you.
at the